The autumn forest was engulfed in an eerie, damp silence. A mist curled along the ground, wrapping the trees in a murky shroud, and only the sound of the light drizzle falling on the fallen leaves broke this dreary stillness. You walked along a barely visible path, trying not to miss the rare mushrooms hiding under the brown carpet of leaves. The forest was familiar, but today it felt strange, almost hostile. You looked up, trying to find the path you had taken, but the thick fog had swallowed all landmarks. The forest suddenly changed. Its appearance became frighteningly unfamiliar. The anxiety that had been simmering in the back of your mind started to grow into fear. You tried to remember where you had come from, but all the trees, all the paths, merged into one endless, impenetrable space. Your eyes darted around, but there was no sign to guide you back. You stopped, listening to the sounds of the forest. But besides the quiet rustle of rain, there was nothing to hear. No birds singing, no insects chirping, not even the distant hum of the road, which you could always distinguish even deep in the forest. It was as if the forest was holding its breath, waiting for something. "What should I do?" you whispered, barely holding back the rising panic. You tried to keep walking, hoping your feet would somehow lead you home, but the forest only grew denser. Branches clung to your clothes, wet leaves stuck to your face, and the path you were following gradually disappeared under a carpet of rotting leaves. You quickened your pace, hoping to find an exit soon, but the forest seemed to mock you, thwarting your every attempt. Suddenly, you stopped. The silence was broken by a faint, barely audible sound of rustle. It came from somewhere to your right, from the thick underbrush. You thought someone was cautiously making their way through the bushes, trying not to attract attention. Your heart pounded in your chest, but curiosity outweighed fear. You moved toward the sound, each step becoming more difficult. The mist enveloped everything around you, making you lose your sense of direction, but the rustling grew more distinct. Soon you emerged into a small clearing, hidden from the eyes of a casual passerby. There, among the moss and mushrooms, stood an old woman. She was dressed in a long black cloak with a deep hood covering her face. A frail, stooped figure was bent over the ground as if searching for something. Your heart tightened with terror, but you still managed to call out to her. "Excuse me," your voice was hoarse, barely audible, but the old woman flinched, clearly hearing you. Slowly, with a barely noticeable creak of joints, she turned in your direction. Her face remained in the shadow of the hood, but you felt her gaze on you heavy, penetrating, as if she could see right through you. Your breath caught as you realized you couldn't move, couldn't tear your eyes away from her figure. "You're lost, dear," she rasped, her voice dry like the branches of an old tree touched by the first frost. "The forest is no place for someone like you." You didn't know what to say. Your lips trembled, but no sound came out. Fear paralyzed you, but despite the horror you felt, her words carried no threat. Rather, there was something comforting, almost maternal in them. "Follow me, I'll lead you out," she said, turning away and slowly moving deeper into the forest. You followed her, as if entranced, unable to resist her call. The forest no longer seemed so frightening, the rain no longer so cold. You felt a strange calm, as if this woman could truly help you. She moved easily despite her age and stooped figure, and you had to quicken your pace to keep up. Soon you reached a wide path, trodden and covered in golden leaves. You realized this was the very path you had taken that morning, but how had you missed it earlier? The old woman stopped, and without turning around said, "Here's your road, dear. Go home, and don't come back to this forest alone." You felt a cold shiver run down your spine, but when you turned to thank her, the old woman was gone. You looked around, but there was no one there. The fog began to lift, and the forest became ordinary again, familiar and safe. You quickly headed home, but with each step, fear grew stronger. Who was this woman? Why did she know how to find the way, when even you couldn't orient yourself? You reached home, but peace didn't follow. The forest behind you seemed even more alien, as if mocking you. You couldn't sleep all night, and in the morning, barely calming your trembling nerves, you decided to return to the place where you met the old woman, to figure out what had happened. You walked along the same path, trying to find that clearing, but it was as if it had never existed. The forest was empty, and only the quiet rustle of leaves reminded you of the previous day. You returned home, but the unsettling feeling that the forest had taken something important from you never left. And it was only late in the evening that you noticed a strange scar on your neck, under the skin, like an old, long-healed wound. But you knew for certain that it hadn't been there before. You felt cold. It seemed the shadow of the old woman trailed behind you from the forest, as if wanting to remind you that she had left a part of herself within you. And with each passing day, you felt the forest calling you back, beckoning with the quiet whisper of wind in the tree branches, hiding behind the window. And one day you couldn't resist. You went back to the forest, this time already knowing there might be no way back.